Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and we're going to have on this week's episode the second part of the story, The New Kid. And this part ended up being longer than the first part by quite a bit, but I decided it probably makes more sense to just finish the story this week instead of splitting it into three. So this episode will be a little longer than last time. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And without more ado, here we go. As a note, as a reminder, if you did listen to the episode last week, the story is about Amelia and Daniel mostly. And Daniel is the new kid in school, and Amelia has had a couple of unusual, incidents that happened when he did arrive. The days passed, and Amelia occasionally talked with Daniel, but mostly he kept to himself. The bruise on his shoulder bloomed and then slowly faded. Occasionally, Daniel would show up with new bruises or other injuries. She wondered if Bill and Wendy were hurting Daniel, but didn't know how to ask. Still, she resolved herself that if he ever looked really hurt, she would find the guts to ask or tell Miss Wickham. A few weeks later, it was Amelia's turn to take home Aristotle. She was waiting expectantly all week. On Friday afternoon, she took some food pellets for him and watched Miss Wickham put Aristotle in his carry cage. I understand the urge to play with him, but be gentle and don't let him around younger kids or pets, she advised. That's okay, Amelia said. I don't have any younger brothers or sisters. I just need to close the door to keep Runcie and Puddles out if I ever take him out of his cage. When, she thought to himself, for she was already planning on cuddling him for a good long time. Miss Wickham showed her how to refill the little water bottle in the cage, which was drained for the trip to Amelia's house, and how to close and secure the cage door. Your parents have my number if you have any questions or need anything, Miss Wickham said. Thanks, Miss Wickham, Amelia said, lifting up the cage and rushing out the door, though with a good amount of care for Aristotle. Daniel usually walked home on his own, but today he was waiting for Amelia. Any plans for him this weekend, he asked. Just to cuddle him and love him as much as humanly possible, she replied. Daniel grinned. She did. She spent a good part of the weekend closeted in her bedroom, feeding Aristotle pellets and playing with him, even having him sleep in her lap while she read. On Monday morning, she woke up a little early and went over to Aristotle's cage. It was empty. The door, which she was sure she had latched properly, as she had every time, was slightly ajar. Pure panic smashed her, drowned her like an overwhelming wave. No, 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 she said over and over again as she got down on her hands and knees and started looking everywhere Aristotle might be. No, no, no. She continued this chant, this howl of fear, as she scrambled around her bedroom. She couldn't find him anywhere. She threw on some clothes, taking the moment to try to calm down, without much success. The door to my room is open, she thought. He might be anywhere in the house. Also, I should check in my closet. The door's closed, but hamsters can squeeze into pretty small spaces, right? She threw open her closet and looked through the many things that were in there, but found nothing. Where can he be, she thought. What will Miss Wickham say? She was already starting to breathe heavily. She got back down on all fours and checked her bedroom again, still finding nothing. The no, no, no was rising again inside her. She realized tears were streaming down her face. She was choking on her crying now. Some part of her realized she had to calm down, but calm would not come. She stalked out of her room now, hunting. He wasn't in the bathroom near her bedroom. She headed towards the living room, nothing there. Then she went into the kitchen. In the corner of the kitchen, by the baseboard under a built-in cupboard, was the light brown fluffy mass that was Aristotle. Oh no, Amelia moaned, dropping to her knees beside him. He had some puncture marks on his neck, and he was moving, but very slightly. Oh, Runcie, she said. Runcie got you. I'm so sorry. She scooped him up and ran back to her bedroom, back to Aristotle's cage. She whispered please to Aristotle the whole way, begging his forgiveness. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Her parents were stirring in their bedroom, and a different sort of panic took her. What would happen when they found out? Should she just tell them? Maybe see if they could take Aristotle to a vet? But he was so hurt, so badly hurt. Blinded by fear, she put Aristotle in his cage, locked it, and grabbed it in her backpack. She went down the hall and right out the front door. But she didn't know where to go or what to do. She instead paced around her yard, the driveway, and the sidewalk in front of her house. Her crying was becoming more intense again, and she finally sat down on the lawn, the morning dew wetting the back of her pants, but she didn't care. She cried and cried, burying her face in her hands. Some small part of her finally came to the realization that the only thing to be done was to tell her parents and have them get Aristotle some help. Even if he was beyond saving, she had to try. She gave one last heaving sob, feeling utterly miserable. "I failed you," she said. "I failed you. I failed you." He looked scared. Amelia looked up, startled. In her crying, she hadn't heard Daniel at all, but there he was. "He's hurt. He's badly hurt. My cat got him. My cat got him, and it's all my fault," Amelia said. The last part a confession, a self-scourging, a malediction. Daniel said nothing for a moment. "Wendy's good with animals," he said. "Let me take him to her. Maybe she can help." "Can she?" "We'll see." He picked up the cage from the lawn beside Amelia. Amelia got up and made to come with him, but he stopped her. "You're already hyperventilating, and I'm going to be running all the way there," he said. "Instead, can you take my backpack with you to school? It'll let me run faster." "Okay," Amelia said. Daniel unslung his backpack and handed it to her, then legged it away back, she knew, in the direction of his house. But it was hopeless, hopeless, she thought. Aristotle, precious Aristotle, was hurt too badly. She would go to school, drop off Daniel's backpack, and have to tell Miss Wickham what she had done, what she had failed to do. The road to the school stretched out in front of her like taffy, yet at the same time it seemed to take no time to get there. She walked into the class, put Daniel's backpack down on his chair, and her own on hers, then walked up to Miss Wickham, who was already looking at her, concerned. "What's wrong, Amelia?" Amelia burst into tears. She couldn't talk. Miss Wickham got out of her seat and came over to her, kneeling down and putting a hand on her shoulder. "Do you need help? Are you okay?" she asked. Amelia just shook her head. Finally, she was able to say, "Aristotle." Miss Wickham straightened up. Amelia saw her eyes glance over to where the carry cage should be, next to Aristotle's class cage. She even saw the realization snap her. "I see," said Miss Wickham. "Is he dead?" "No," said Amelia, "but he's hurt bad." Miss Wickham was quiet for a moment. "Okay, Amelia. Thank you for telling me. I'm sure you did your best. Where is he now?" Daniel's taking him to his foster mom, Wendy. He says she knows about animals," Amelia replied. "Then that's all we can do," Miss Wickham said. "When Daniel arrives, he can fill me in. I will tell the class if there is definite news, okay?" Amelia nodded. She knew definite news could only mean Aristotle's death. Though part of her hoped he would somehow pull through, she was already preparing for the worst. She went to her seat and pulled out a book just to have something to look at other than the other students who were starting to arrive. Her friend Tracy came in, and when she saw Amelia crying, came over to find out what was wrong, but Amelia just shook her head and said, "I'm okay, later." Tracy, puzzled, took her seat beside her, clearly upset herself. Class was nearly ready to start when Matt Powell, who sat near the back of the class near Aristotle and hadn't seen Amelia when he came in, called across to her, "Hey, Amelia, you had Aristotle, didn't you? Where is he?" Amelia fought back a new set of tears. Miss Wickham said in a loud voice, clearly meant to keep anyone in the class from asking similar questions, "Aristotle had an injury over the weekend. He's being looked at. We will let you know when we know more." "Oh," Matt said. He looked at Amelia awkwardly, unsure how to deal with her being upset. "Okay." He opened his backpack, looking for something else to focus on. Class started, but Daniel had not yet arrived. Each minute was another lead weight she could feel gathering in her chest. Finally, the door opened, and Daniel was there holding Aristotle's carry cage. He looked at Amelia and said, "He's going to be okay. Look, he's not scared anymore." He came over to Amelia, glancing at Miss Wickham to make sure it was okay. He was limping. "I'm glad to hear it, Daniel. Are you hurt?" Miss Wickham asked. Amelia was looking in at Aristotle and barely heard Daniel's answer. "Yeah, I twisted my ankle pretty bad on the way here. I guess I got too excited. We'll go to the nurse. Class, continue finishing the math problems while I'm gone. Amelia, please put Aristotle back in his main cage." "Yes, ma'am," Amelia said. Aristotle was moving normally and seemed as happy as he ever was. Yes, there was a tiny drop of blood still visible on the light brown fur of his neck, but he didn't seem hurt at all. She would have cried again out of relief, but she was too drained. Instead, with a crimped smile on her face, she did as Miss Wickham had asked. Now that the panic is over, thoughts were rolling through her head. How could he be so healthy? Had the injury not been as bad as she thought? But no, it had been a terrible wound, hadn't it? She wondered, too, if the class wasn't thinking she had gotten all worked up over nothing, over a mere scare. Would Miss Wickham think less of her? Would Daniel? Would she? Had she just let fear and panic ruin her ability to make a decision? She placed Aristotle in his glass cage and locked him in securely. He smelt around, then went to a corner to nap. Amelia went back to her desk. Beyond the confusion and the remnants of fear, she was simply now exhausted. The rest of that day was a blur. Daniel's ankle, as it turned out, was broken, and he'd gone to the hospital. He showed up the next day with a cast on his leg almost up to the knee. No one seemed to want to write on Daniel's cast, but Amelia did at their first recess. Daniel simply went outside and then sat down on the ground near the door in the shade of the overhang. Amelia had brought out a marker just for the occasion. "May I write on your cast?" she asked. "Sure," Daniel said, bemused. "Is that still a thing?" "Why not?" Amelia responded. "Okay, then," Daniel said. Amelia wrote, "Get well soon, and thanks for helping Aristotle, Amelia." Then she drew a little oval with some eyes and whiskers to symbolize the hamster. "I still can't believe he didn't die. He's so healthy now," Amelia said. "Yeah," Daniel said, examining her message. "Well, he was scared all right. I think," he said, choosing his words slowly, "that he was bitten, just not that badly, and it put him into shock. I think he would have gotten better no matter what. I really didn't do anything," he finished. "He would have gotten better all on his own." "Either way, you helped him, and I didn't know what to do," Amelia said. "Thanks." "Sure." And that would have been it. Amelia would have forgotten all those moments from when Daniel was new to the class. Though she remained friendly to him throughout elementary school, he kept mostly to himself, and she had her friends. Eventually his cast came off, with Amelia's still being the only message written on it, and Daniel was back to full health. Elementary school itself kept on through the 6th grade, and Amelia and Daniel were much the same. Then they passed on to middle school, and they did not see each other at all, until one day early in the spring of their 8th grade. Amelia had gotten a phone, and she'd be the first to tell you it was her mistake. She was walking home and didn't hear the car that hit her. The middle school was quite a bit further from their house than the elementary school was, but she'd been allowed to walk to it just the same. She had in fact just passed the elementary school when it happened. Amelia remembered nothing of it. She was simply walking along, and then she was on the ground, in pain. Someone, probably the driver, was hovering over her, panicking. Amelia vaguely heard her sounding by turns angry and scared. She was calling for an ambulance, but also warning Amelia that she'd be damned if she'd pay for her ambulance after she walked right out in front of her car. Amelia barely heard her. She wondered how badly she was hurt, wondered if she might die. She realized that as much pain as she was in, she couldn't feel her legs or move them at all. "No, no, no," she said. "No, no, no. No, no, no." When she opened her eyes, she found she had to close them again. The world hurt to see. No, no, no. She didn't know how much time had passed. She didn't know if or how many times she'd been unconscious. The first thing she remembered clearly later was another voice. "You look scared." She opened her eyes, and despite the glare and the pain, she saw a pair of piercing gray-blue eyes. Her mind searched for a connection, a name. Daniel? Yeah, but rest. She seemed to fall, not unconscious, but asleep. She woke up in a hospital bed. For a moment, she thought everything would be all right. Then she remembered that she was paralyzed, and she sat up, bolt upright in bed, reaching down to feel her legs. She could feel them. She could move them, too. Her mom was in a chair next to the bed. "Well, you're really awake," she said. "Take it easy, honey. They say you're fine, but you must have gotten knocked around some for it to be out like that." I got hit by a car," Amelia said. "That's right," her mom said. "Daniel was there. I think he helped me. At least, he told me to rest." "Well, good idea," her mom said. "Dad'll be back any second, by the way. He's getting me a cup of water." "I need to thank Daniel," Amelia said. "Well, you'll have to thank him later," her mom said. "Did he come with us to the hospital?" Amelia asked. "You were already here when we got here," her mom said. A nurse came in, followed by her father. "Yeah, you're awake," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Good," Amelia said. "Is Daniel here? I'd like to thank him for helping me." "Daniel has his own room," the nurse said. "I'll see if he's available to visit." "Daniel's hurt?" Amelia asked, shocked. "Yes, you both came in hurt," the nurse replied. "He's still in the emergency ward. You look to be in pretty good shape. Lucky girl." "But how did Daniel get hurt?" Amelia asked. "I'm sorry, I don't know that," the nurse said. "I only know what I know from when they transferred you to us. They mentioned Daniel as a more serious case." "Can she go home then, nurse?" her mom asked. "I'll have to check with the doctor, but I think he'll be going home soon," she replied. A doctor checked Amelia out soon after and gave her the go-ahead to go home with a list of symptoms to watch out for and report to the hospital if she had them. But Amelia wanted to see Daniel first, and her mom and dad went with her to find Daniel's room. Fortunately, the nurse there said she could visit. "Daniel?" Amelia said upon entering. She asked her parents to stay outside. "Hey, Amelia." Daniel was pale and hooked up to a lot of machines. "What happened? I got hit by the car, but you look like it might have been you. I couldn't feel my legs, but they're fine now." "Good," Daniel said. "What happened to you?" she asked. "Liver pulped," he said. "They hope enough has survived for it to come back." I'm confused," Amelia said. "You weren't hit by the car. I was. You just came and helped me. You were fine, weren't you?" Daniel waited a long time to answer, looking at the ceiling. "I was fine. Amelia, I'd like to tell you something that you can't repeat to anyone." He looked over at her. "You've been nice to me, nicer than anyone else at school. And that was enough to make me help you, and I suppose it's enough that you also deserve an answer. I've always been able to help things. If a creature was hurt, dying, I could sense it, tell where it was, and I could make it so that it wouldn't die. I could heal it. But it costs. It costs a lot. I kept that beetle from dying, and that cost me a nosebleed. That mouse cost me a shoulder, and then it died anyway. Aristotle cost me my ankle. I never know what's going to break when I do it. But I don't like not helping. That hurts more, if you know what I mean." Amelia thought, then nodded. "Good. Well, I knew saving you was going to cost an awful lot. I knew I might die. But I just couldn't let you die or live in a wheelchair if I could help. So I did." "You're telling me your liver is wrecked because you healed me?" "That's what I'm saying." "How is that possible?" "I don't know. It's just something I've been able to do as long as I can remember." "Well, no, not as long as I can remember," he said. "Since my parents died. We were all in a car wreck, and I watched them die from my car seat. I couldn't get out, and I just watched them die. I couldn't help them. But something in me broke. Something changed. I don't know what. But just after that, I saw a cat leap on a bird. Well, no, I didn't see it exactly. I could tell something was scared. Then I went and found it in the yard. When I went up, the cat ran away, but the bird was hurt. One of its wings was nearly torn off. I reached out to it and touched it, and it wasn't scared anymore. It flew off just a minute later. But I got a massive pain in my eye, which swelled and bruised. I couldn't see out of it for weeks. Pretty soon I became one of the more bruised kids in my school. Eventually the foster parents I had were blamed for hurting me, though I protested, and I was given to Bill and Wendy, and we moved here. I think they may be getting blamed for some of my injuries still." Amelia thought about what she had believed had been happening at Daniel's home and nodded. "I try to hold back, to just heal things when it's really needed, but it hurts hearing things that are scared and not helping them," he said. "I don't like myself not helping them when I could be. So I do it, sometimes. The bigger the injury and the bigger the animal, the bigger the injury to me," he said. "That's what scared me about you. I'd never healed anything bigger than a cat, and that fractured my arm. I wondered if I would die doing it, but I decided I had to." He stopped rather suddenly, as if embarrassed. Amelia was silent. She just shook her head. "I know it's a lot to ask you to believe," he said, "but it's the truth." "I believe you. I just don't know what to say." That's enough. That you understand and believe me. I just don't want you to die for what you did to help me." Me neither," he grinned feebly. Note: when I ran down this story, she decided to write it down for me in this form, as though third person. I don't know what that means in terms of its veracity. I've been trying to run down Daniel Burton, but without luck. In either case, it seems our tactic of getting connections inside the medical community is paying dividends. M. And there we have it. This was a lot of fun to write, and now that I've actually, finished this story, I think I can say a few more words about it. I didn't really talk about the story last time because, it wasn't really done yet. The part that I enjoyed writing, I think, the most in some ways was the part where Amelia sort of had to find what happened to Aristotle, the hamster, and because just something about, like, I tried to make the writing faster and choppier, in other words, sort of make the writing sort of reflect how she would be feeling in that moment and how I feel when I've been panicked in my life. And I'm pretty happy with it, I guess. So it was an interesting story to write. I'll be coming back with another story next week. I've got several ideas of what I want to write, so I'm not 100% sure of which story you're going to end up hearing. But I will write something this week and read it out next Sunday, and that will be the next CryptoBiography. So thank you for listening. If you have any comments or questions, again, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. We do this as a YouTube video, and then I clean up the audio track and put it out as an audio podcast on iTunes and Stitcher and several other places, or you can go straight to cryptobiography.com and listen to it there. Thanks for watching or listening, and we'll see you next week. Words and music, copyright 2018, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved.